Hello and welcome to the video. I am Vishwajit Das and today I am going to talk about the transport layer. This is basically taken from Computer Networking, a top-down approach for tradition by Jim Croce and Keith Ross. So let's get started with the topic, the transport layer. And the goals behind it are to understand the principles behind the transport layer services, multiplexing, demultiplexing, reliable data transfer, flow control, congestion control, learn about the protocols in the internet such as UDP connectionless transport, TCP connection transport and TCP congestion control. So the outline behind the chapter 3. So starting with the transport services and protocols. So the first one is to provide logical communication between app processes running on different hosts. The second motive is the transport protocols run in the end systems. The sender side breaks the app messages into segments and passes to the network layer. The receiver side reassembles the segments into messages and passes to the application layer, and more than one transport protocol available to apps like the internet, TCP and UDP. So next we move on to the transport versus network layer. The network layer is a logical communication between hosts, whereas transport layer is a logical communication between processes. The transport layer relies on and enhances the network layer services. The household analog is 12 kids sending letters to 12 kids. Processes are kids, app messages are letters in envelopes, hosts are houses, transport protocol is AN and bill, and network layer protocol is the postal service. So next we move on to the internet transport layer protocols. TCP is a reliable in-order delivery. It provides congestion control, flow control and connection setup, whereas UDP is unreliable and unordered delivery. No extension of IP, services that are not available, delay guarantees and bandwidth guarantees. So next we move on to multiplexing and demultiplexing. So demultiplexing at the receiver host, delivering received segments to the correct socket. Multiplexing at the sender host, gathering data from multiple sockets, enveloping the data with the header, later used for demultiplexing. Here a diagram has been shown for the reference part. Here there are application, transport, network, link and physical layers have been shown. So next we move on to how demultiplexing works. Host receives IP datagrams. Each datagram has source IP address, destination IP address. Each datagram carries one transport layer segment. Each segment has source and destination port number. Host uses IP addresses and port numbers to direct segment to appropriate socket. Here the source port and destination port combined have been shown as 32 bits, other header files and application data and message. It is a simple TCP UDP segment format. So next we move on to connectionless demultiplexing, to create sockets with port numbers. Here the example has been shown. UDP sockets can be identified by two tuples respectively, that are destination IP address and destination port number. When host receives UDP segment, checks destination port number in the segment, directs the UDP segment to socket with that port number. IP datagrams with different source IP addresses and or source port numbers directed to the same socket. So here a diagram has been shown for the reference. Datagram socket server socket is equal to new datagram socket 6428. So here SP represents the sender port, whereas DP represents the destination port. SP provides the return address. Here server is C and the clients are A and B respectively. So connection oriented demux, TCP socket is basically identified by four tuples respectively, that are source IP address, source port number, destination IP address and destination port number. Receiver host uses all the four values to direct segment to appropriate socket. Server host may support many simultaneous TCP sockets where each is identified by its own 4 tuples. Web servers have different sockets for each connecting client. Non-persistent HTTP will have different socket for each request. So here a basic diagram of connection oriented demux has been shown. Here all the 4 tuples have been represented as an example. These 4 tuples are the sender's port, the destination port, the sender's IP address, and the destination IP address. They have been shown here as an example for your reference. Here the client's IP addresses are A and B respectively, and the server's IP address is C. Here P1, P2, P3 are the sender's port, that is the client's port, and P4, P5, P6 are the server's port. Here P4 has been shown as a single port, whereas in the previous diagram there were 3 ports to handle the same task. So next we move on to the connectionless transport, that is UDP. Now the user datagram protocol or UDP. It is basically an internet transport protocol. It has many disadvantages, like it may be lost or delivered out of order to an application. But there are advantages also, like there is no handshaking required between the sender and the receiver, and the UDP segment is handled independently. So why is there a UDP? It requires no connection establishment, it is simple, and no connection state at the sender or receiver, small segment header, and no congestion control, like UDP can blast away as fast as desired. So UDP often used for streaming multimedia applications. It is loss tolerant and rate sensitive. Other UDP uses are DNS and SNMP. Reliable transfer over UDP adds reliability at the application layer. It is an application specific error recovery. So the source port and destination port, and there is the length which is given in bytes of UDP segment, including the header and the checksum and the application data. It is basically a UDP segment format which has been shown here for the reference part. So the UDP checksum, its goals is to detect errors in the transmitted segment. The sender treats segment contents as sequence of 16-bit integers. The checksum is addition of one's complement of sum of the segment contents. Sender puts checksum value into the UDP checksum field. The receiver computes the checksum of the received segment. Checks if the computed checksum is equal to the field value. No error detected, yes, no error detected, but maybe errors nonetheless. So we will talk more about this with an example. So the internet checksum example. So here we have taken two 16-bit integers. We will add the numbers, and when we will add the numbers, a carry out is generated from the most significant bit. Now we will perform a wraparound, and it is to be added to the result. So a sum is generated as the result, and we will take the complement of the sum to generate the respective checksum. So here 0 1 0 0 1 0 0 1 followed by 4 zeros, then double 1 is the checksum. So next we move on to the principles of reliable data transfer. So reliable data transfer is very important in applications, transport and link layers. It is a top 10 list of important networking topics. So the characteristics of the unreliable channel will determine the complexity of the reliable data transfer protocol, or RDT. So here we have a diagram of the provided service. We have the transport layer and the application layer. Here the sender process sends the data through a reliable channel, and the data is received by the receiver process through the channel. So we are also going to implement the service implementation of the unreliable channel. So we have an unreliable channel here. and the sender sends the data and the receiver receives the data through a reliable data transfer protocol and at the sender side and the receiver side respectively. So the RDD send, the delivered data, the UDT send and the RDT receive are the functions that are used here. So the RTT send is called from above. It basically passes the data to deliver it to the receiver's upper layer. Next we go to the UDT send function. The UDT send function is called by the RTD to transfer packet over the unreliable channel to the receiver. The RTT receive is called when packet arrives on the receiver side of the channel. The delivered data is called by the RTT to deliver data to the up. So we'll get started with it. So the reliable data transfer will be incrementally developed at the sender and the receiver side of the reliable data transfer protocol. We will consider only a unidirectional data transfer, but control info will flow on both directions. We will use finite state machines or FSM to specify sender and the receiver. Here a diagram has been shown like the state. When is the next state uniquely determined by the next event. So the RTD 1.0, reliable data transfer over a reliable channel. So an underlying channel is perfectly reliable when there will be no bit errors or no loss of packets. Separate FSMs for the sender and receiver side respectively. So the sender sends the data into the underlying channel and the receiver reads the data from the underlying channel. The sender will wait for the call from above while the receiver will wait for the call from below. So next we move on to the RTD 2.0, channel with bit errors. Underlying channel may flip bits in packets, checksum to detect bit errors. The question is how to recover from errors. The answer is ACKs or acknowledgements. The receiver explicitly tells the sender that packet received is okay. And another one is negative acknowledgements. The receiver explicitly tells the sender that packet had errors. Then the sender retransmits the packets on receipt of NAK. New mechanisms are RTD 2.0. Beyond RTD 1.0, there is error detection and receiver feedback. Control messages like ACK and NAK. So FSM specification. Here the FSM specification diagram has been shown, where the sender sends the data. He sends the data in the form of a packet. Inside the packet there is the data and the checksum embedded inside. So the sender sends the packet to the receiver. Now he waits for the acknowledgement or NAK to come from the receiver. Now if the receiver receives the packet and sends a negative acknowledgement to the sender, then the sender has to send the packet again to the receiver. Now there is a case like the sender gets an acknowledgement from the receiver, then the process is complete. So now at the receiver side, if the receiver receives a corrupt packet, then he sends the negative acknowledgement to the sender. Now if the receiver receives the packet and the packet is not corrupt, then he extracts the data from the packet and sends the acknowledgement to the sender. Now when he sends the acknowledgement to the sender, the process for sending the respective packet is complete. Now there is an error scenario. The error scenario arises only when the packet is corrupt. So a basic flow diagram has been shown for your reference. Now the RTT 2.0 has a fatal flaw. What happens if the ACK or NAK is corrupted? The sender doesn't know what happened at the receiver. The sender can't just retransmit. There may be the possibility of possible duplicate. So to handle the duplicates, the sender retransmits the current packet if the NAK is garbled. The sender adds the sequence number to each packet and the receiver discards the duplicate packet. So next we move on to pipelined protocols. So what is pipelining? The sender allows multiple in-flight yet to be acknowledged packets. Range of sequence numbers must be increased. The buffering at the sender or the receiver. Two generic forms of pipeline protocols are go back N and selective. Here a diagram for pipelining has been shown. Here the sender sends the first packet bit at t is equal to 0 followed by the last packet bit as t is equal to L by R. So the receiver receives the first packet bit followed by the last packet bit when he sends an ACK. The same goes for the second packet and third packet as well. So he sends an ACK for them. So when the ACK arrives to the sender, it is basically the round trip time t is equal to RTT plus L by R. The U sender is equal to 3 into L by R by RTT plus L by R, which is 0.0008 here. So the go back N, the kth bit in the packet header, window size of up to N, consecutive and ACK packets allowed. So here is a basic diagram to understand the concept. The ACKs are all packets up to including the sequence N. Cumulative ACK may receive duplicate ACKs. Timer for each in-flight packet, timeout, retransmit packet and all higher sequence packets in the window. So this is the basic go back N ARQ concept that has been shown here. The window size has been taken as N and the send base and the next sequence num. Now this is a diagram for the sender extended finite state machine. It represents the sender side. Now the sender sends the data and the timeout for the process starts. Now if the sender sends the corrupt data, then he has to send the data again. Now if he does not send the corrupt data, then the timer stops. Now this is the receiver side for the finite state machine. Now if the data is not corrupt, then the receiver extracts the data. But if the data is corrupt, then it waits for the sender to send the packet again. If the data is not corrupt, then it sends the ACK sequence number and the checksum. Now it is a ACK only process, like always send the ACK for correctly received packet with the highest in order sequence. It may generate duplicate ACKs. We need to only remember the expected sequence number. So for out of packet order, we need to discard it. Don't buffer, no receiver buffering is required. Re-ACK packet with the highest in order sequence. So this is about the go back and ARQ. So we will visualize the go back and ARQ in action. So here is a visual diagram for the same, including the sender and the receiver side. Now there are various cases. If there is a loss of the packet, or there is the ACK gets discarded, or there is a packet timeout, we leave it to you for visualization purposes. Now we will see the selective repeat. The receiver individually acknowledges all the collectively received packets, buffered packets as needed for individual in order delivery to upper layers. The sender only resends the packets for which ACK is not received. The sender timer for each unacked packet The sender window n consecutive sequences again limits sequences of sent un-ACKed packets. So here is a diagram for the same. Here is the sender side of sequence number. It contains the send base, window size n, and next sequence num. The green part is the already ACKed, yellow one is the send not yet not ACKed, blue one is the usable not yet sent, and the white one is the not usable. Now here is the receiver view of the sequence numbers. Purple one is the out of order but already ACKed, grey one is the expected not yet received, blue is the acceptable, and white is not usable. So here we have the selective repeat process in a broad manner. So the sender sends the data from above. If next available sequence in window send packets timeout occurs, then resends the packets and restarts the timer. Now if the ACK is received, then marks the packet as received. If n smallest un-ACKed packet advances the window base to next un-ACKed sequence. Now in the receiver side, if the packet n in send ACK, then out of order buffer, in order deliver, also delivered buffered, in order packets, advance window to next not yet received packet n in ACK, otherwise ignore. Now here is the selective repeat process in action, where the packets are sent by the sender and received by the receiver. There are the various processes shown, such as the loss of packet, the packet received, the packet buffered, the ACK sent by the receiver. All are shown here in this diagram. So this is all the overall selective repeat process in action. So we leave it to you for your greater visualization purposes. So the selective repeat dilemma, for example, the sequences are 0, 1, 2, 3, the window size is 3. Receiver sees no difference in two scenarios. Incorrectly passes the duplicate data as new, as in part A. Question: what is the relationship between sequence size and window size? Now we leave it to you as a homework. So here in the diagram there is the sender window shown and the receiver window. The sender sends the packet and the receiver sends the ACKs to the sender. There is the timeout also shown. So now we'll go on to the connected oriented transport, or TCP. So the TCP is a point to point, that is there is one sender and one receiver only. It is reliable in order byte stream, that is no message boundaries. It is pipelined, TCP congestion and flow control, set window size. It has send and receive buffers. It has full duplex data, that is it is bi-directional data flow in same connection. MSS or maximum segment size connection. It is connection oriented or handshaking, and its sender receive state before data exchange, flow controlled. So sender will not overwhelm the receiver. Now here we have the TCP segment structure. We have the source port and destination port, which is a combination of 32 bits. We have the sequence number and the acknowledgement number, which we count in bytes of data, not segments. We have the acknowledgement number, the receiver window, the checksum, the urgent data pointer, the options, which is of variable length, and the application data, which is also of variable length. The receiver window is of bytes, receiver willing to accept. We have the U urgent data, which is generally not used. We have the ACK, a valid one. We have the PSH or push data now, which is also generally not used. We have the REST, SYN and FIN commands, which is for connection establishment, and the internet checksum, as in UDP. So here we have the TCP sequences and ACKs. Sequence is a byte stream number of first byte in segments data. ACKs are the sequence of next byte expected from other side. We can also have a cumulative ACK. Now the question is how receiver handles the out of order segments. Now the answer is the TCP specification doesn't say anything. It is up to the implementer to implement the same. Now we have a simple telnet scenario where there is a host A as well as host B. Now they send sequence numbers, ACKs and data to one another to check if the data is being received by the receiver correctly. Now the TCP round trip time and timeout. How to set TCP timeout value? Longer than round trip time, but round trip time varies. Too short premature timeout. Unnecessary retransmissions. Too long slow reaction to segment loss. How to estimate RTT? Now the sample RTT is measured time from segment transmission until ACK receipt. So ignore retransmissions and the sample RTT will vary. Now we have the formula: estimated RTT 1 minus alpha multiplied with estimated RTT plus alpha into sample RTT. We have exponential weighted moving average. Influence of past sample decreases exponentially fast. The typical alpha value is 0.125. So here is a graph for the example of RTT estimation. We have the RTT versus time graph. The purple one is the estimated RTT while the blue line shows the sample RTT. There is a variation in the graph which has been shown. Now the TCP round trip time and timeout. Now for setting the timeout, the estimated RTT plus safety margin. Large variation in estimated RTT results in larger safety margin. First estimate of how sample RTT deviates from estimated RTT. We take deviation in RTT as 1 minus beta into deviation in RTT plus beta into mod of sample RTT minus estimated RTT. Typically beta is 0.25. Then set the timeout interval as estimated RTT plus 4 into deviation in RTT. Now we move on to the reliable data transfer. TCP creates RDD service on top of IP's unreliable service. Now it is pipeline segments, cumulative ACKs are sent. TCP uses single retransmission timer. Retransmissions are triggered by timeout events and duplicate ACKs. Initially consider simplified TCP sender, ignore duplicate ACKs, ignore flow control and congestion control. Now this is about the reliable data transfer. Now for the sender events, we have the data received from application. Create segment with sequence. Sequence is byte stream number of first data byte in segment. Start timer if not already running. Think of the timer as for the oldest unescaped segment. Expiration interval is timeout interval. Timeout is retransmit segment that caused the timeout. Restart the timer if ACK is received, if acknowledges previously unacked segments. Update what is known to be ACK'd. Start timer if there are outstanding segments. Now we have a simple program here, simple algorithm here to view the TCP sender side. A simplified version has been shown here, like the comment send base -1 last cumulative ACK'd byte. Example has been shown as send base -1 is equal to 71. Now if y is equal to 73, so the receiver wants 73 plus. So y is greater than send base, so that new data is ACK'd. So you can view this program. So now the TCP retransmission scenarios. So here we have the lost ACK scenario where the ACK gets lost. So the sender again has to send the sequence 92 to the receiver, and the receiver has to send the ACK again. So we also have here the premature timeout scenario. Here the sender sends two sequences 92 and 100 respectively, but the timeout occurs for the sequence 92. So the sender again sends the sequence 92 and the receiver has to send the acknowledgement. So we have the cumulative ACK scenario here. The sender is sending the sequence 92 and 100 to the receiver, but there is a ACK loss. So the receiver sends the cumulative ACK, that is 120, to the sender. So here we have the TCP ACK generation, the event at the receiver. So the arrival of in-order segments with expected sequences, all data up to the expected sequence already ACK'd. Arrival of in-order segment with expected sequence, one other segment has ACK pending. Arrival of out-of-order segment higher than the expected sequence, gap detected. Arrival of segment that partially or completely fills the gap. Now we have the TCP receiver action. If there is a delayed ACK, waits up to 500 millisecond for the next segment. If no segment, then sends the ACK. Immediately sends the single cumulative ACK, ACKing both in order segments. It immediately sends the duplicate ACK indicating sequence of next expected byte. Immediately sends the ACK provided that the segment starts at the lower end of the gap. So we have the fast retransmit. The timeout period often relatively long. Long delay occurs before resending lost packet. Detects lost segments via duplicate ACKs. Sender often sends many segments back to back. If segment is lost, there will likely be many duplicate ACKs. If sender receives 3 ACKs for the same data, it supposes that segment after the ACK data was lost. Fast retransmit is resend the segment before the expiration of the timer. So here we have the fast retransmit algorithm. Event ACK received with ACK field value of y. If the value of y is greater than send base, then send base value is modified to y's value. If there are currently not yet acknowledged segments, then the timer is started. Else, it increments the count of duplicate ACKs that are received for y. If the count of duplicate ACKs received for y is equal to 3, then it resends the segment with sequence number y. So the fast retransmit algorithm has been shown here, where we use the duplicate ACK for already ACKed segment. So now we go to flow control. So the TCP flow control, receiver side of the TCP connection has a receiver buffer. So we have a receiver window and the receiver buffer. App processes may be slow at reading from buffer. Flow control, sender won't overflow receiver's buffer by transmitting too much or too fast. Speed matching service, matching the send rate to the receiver's app drain rate. So how does the TCP flow control work? So suppose the TCP receiver discards out of order segments. Now the spare room in the buffer is equal to receiver window, which is equal to receiver buffer minus last byte received minus last byte read. So the receiver advertises spare room by including value of receiver window in the segments. Sender limits unacked data to the receiver window. Guarantees receiver buffer doesn't overflow. So we now have the connection management. So we now have the TCP connection management. Recall, the TCP sender receiver established connection before exchanging data segments. Initializing the TCP variables like sequences, buffers, flow control info, example the receiver window. So the client is the connection initiator here and the server is being contacted by the client. So we have shown an example for the same. Now we have a three-way handshake. Step 1, client host sends TCP SYN segment to the server, specifies initial sequence with no data. Step 2, server host receives SYN, replies with SYN ACK segment. Server allocates the buffers and specifies server initial sequence. Step 3, the client receives SYN ACK, replies with ACK segment which may contain the data. Now we have the TCP connection management. how to close a connection. So to close the connection, we have shown a function here, client socket.close. This function is responsible for closing the socket. So step 1, client ends the system, sends TCP fin control segment to the server. Step 2, server receives the fin, replies with an ACK, closes connection and sends the fin. Now we have the step 3, client receives the fin, replies with ACK, enters timed wait, will respond with ACK to received fins. Step 4, server receives ACK, connection closed. Note, with small modification can handle simultaneous fins. Now we have the lifecycle diagram for. So in the TCP client lifecycle, we have the client application initiating a TCP connection. So it sends the SYN. Now it receives the SYN and ACK and sends the ACK. So the connection is established. Now the client application initiates a close connection. So it sends fin. So fin wait 1. So now he receives the ACK and sends nothing. Fin wait 2. Now he receives the fin and sends the ACK time wait. Now he waits for 30 seconds and the connection is closed. So now we have the TCP server lifecycle. The server application creates a listen socket. Then it receives the SYN, sends the SYN and ACK. SYN received, then receives the ACK, then sends nothing, connection established. Now he receives the fin, then sends the ACK, so close wait function. Now he sends the fin and the last ACK. Now he receives the ACK and sends nothing, so the connection is closed. So now we have the principles of congestion control. So congestion informally, too many sources sending too much data, too fast for the network to handle. Different from flow control. Manifestations, lost packets, buffer overflow at routers, long delays, queuing in router buffers. It is a very important problem. So the causes and costs of congestion, scenario 1. So there are 2 senders, 2 receivers, 1 router and infinite buffers, and there is no retransmission. So here in the diagram we can see that there are 2 hosts, host A and B respectively. There is an unlimited shared output link buffers. So there is a large delay when it gets congested, but there is also the maximum achievable throughput. So there is a graph shown here for the same, the throughput as well as the delay. So now we have the scenario 2, 1 router and finite buffers. Now there is the sender retransmission of lost packet. Lambda n represents the original data, whereas lambda n dash represents the original data plus the retransmitted data. Here also we have 2 hosts, that is host A and host B, but we have the finite shared output link buffers. So now we have the causes and costs of congestion. Same scenario 2. Always lambda n is equal to lambda out. Good put. Perfect retransmission only when lambda n dash is greater than lambda out. So the retransmission of delayed, not lost packet makes lambda n dash larger than the perfect case for lambda out. So here also we have demonstrated by showing 3 graphs. So the costs of congestion: more work, retransmission for given good put, unneeded retransmissions, link carries multiple copies of the packet. So the scenario 3, here we have 4 senders and have multi-hop paths. We have the timeout and retransmit scenario here. So there is the lambda in, which is the original data, and also the lambda in dash, which represents the original data plus the retransmitted data. We have the finite shared link buffers. So here is a graph shown here for lambda out versus lambda in dash. Another cost of congestion: when packet dropped, any upstream transmission capacity used for that packet is also wasted. So here we have represented it by a simple diagram. So now here we have the approaches towards congestion control. There are mainly two broad approaches towards congestion control: end-to-end congestion control. Here there is no explicit feedback received from the network. Congestion inferred from end system is observed as loss or delay. Approach taken by the TCP. Now there is the network assisted congestion control. Routers provide feedback to the end system, single bit indicating congestion like the SNA, DEC bit, TCP, IP, ECN or ATM. Explicit rate sender should send. Now here we have the case study for the ATM ABR congestion control. Now ABR is the available bit rate. It is an elastic service. If the sender's path is underloaded, then the sender should use the available bandwidth. If the sender's path is congested, then the sender is throttled to minimum guaranteed rate. Now the RM cells are the resource management cells sent by the sender interspersed with data cells. Bits in the RM cells set by switches, network assisted. NI bit, there is no increase in rate, mild congestion. Now in CI bit, it shows congestion indication. RM cells return to the sender by receiver with bits intact. Now we have the 2 byte ER explicit rate field in RM cell. Congested switch may lower the ER value in the cell. Sender send rate, thus maximum supportable rate on the path. EFCI bit in data cells set to 1 in congested switch. If data cell preceding the RM cell has EFCI set, sender sets CI bit in returned RM cell. So here we have a diagram from the source to destination path. The red represents the RM cells and the white represents the data cells. Now we have the TCP congestion control. Additive increase, multiplicative decrease. Approach: increase transmission rate, window size, probing for usable bandwidth until loss occurs. Additive increase congestion window by 1 MSS every RTT until loss detected. Multiplicative decrease, cut Kong win in half after loss. So the sawtooth behavior, probing for bandwidth. So here we have shown a diagram for the additive increase and multiplicative decrease with respect to congestion window size versus time. So the TCP congestion control details. The sender limits the transmission. Last byte send minus last byte ACK is less than is equal to congestion window size. So roughly rate is equal to congestion window by RTT bytes per second. Congestion window is dynamic function of received network congestion. How does sender perceive the congestion? Loss event is equal to timeout or 3 duplicate ACKs. TCP sender reduces rate congestion window after loss event. 3 mechanisms: AIMD, slow start, or conservative after the timeout events. So the TCP slow start: when connection begins, congestion window is equal to 1 MSS. Example, MSS is equal to 500 bytes and RTT is equal to 200 millisecond. Initial rate is equal to 20 kbps. Available bandwidth may be much greater than the MSS by RTT. Desirable to quickly ramp up to the respectable rate. When connection begins, increase rate exponentially fast until the first event loss. So the TCP slow start more. When connection begins, increase rate exponentially until first loss event. Double congestion window every RTT. Done by incrementing congestion window for every ACK received. Summary: initial rate is slow but ramps up exponentially fast. So here we have the RTT and the time diagram. So now we go on to refinement. When should the exponential increase switch to linear? When the congestion window gets to half of its value before timeout. So the implementation variable threshold: at loss event, threshold is set to half of congestion window just before the loss event. So the refinement: inferring loss. After 3 duplicate ACKs, congestion window is cut in half. Window then grows linearly. But after the timeout event, congestion window instead set to 1 MSS. Window then grows exponentially. to a threshold then grows linearly. So here we have a philosophy. So the summary for TCP congestion control. When congestion window is below threshold, sender in the slow start phase, window grows exponentially. When congestion window is above threshold, sender is in congestion avoidance phase, window grows linearly. When a triple duplicate ACK occurs, threshold set to congestion window by 2 and congestion window set to threshold. When timeout occurs, threshold set to congestion window by 2 and congestion window is set to 1 MSS. So here we have a complete documentary for the same. You can view this table. So the TCP throughput. So what's the average throughput of TCP as a function of window size and RTT? Ignore slow start. Let W be the window size when loss occurs. When window is W, throughput is W by RTT. Just after loss, window drops to W by 2. Throughput to W by 2 RTT. Average throughput 0.75 W by RTT. So the TCP futures, TCP over long fat pipes. Example 1500 bytes segments, 100 millisecond RTT, want 10 Gbps throughput. Requires window size of W is equal to 83,333 in-flight segments. Throughput in terms of loss rate 1.2 MSS by RTT root L, where L is equal to 2 into 10 to the power minus 10 WOW. So the TCP fairness. So the fairness goal, if k TCP sessions share the same bottleneck link of bandwidth R, each should have the average rate of R by k. So here we have shown a diagram. So why is TCP fair? Two competing sessions. Additive increase gives slope of 1 as throughput increases. Multiplicative decrease decreases throughput proportionally. So here we have a graph of connection 2 throughput versus connection 1 throughput. So as you can see, there is an additive increase and a multiplicative decrease. So the fairness and UDP. Multimedia applications often do not use TCP, do not want rate throttled by congestion control. Instead use UDP, pump audio or video at constant rate, tolerate packet loss. Research area TCP friendly, fairness and parallel TCP connections. Nothing prevents application from opening parallel connections between two hosts. Web browsers do this. Example, link of rate R supporting 9 connections. New app asks for 1 TCP gets rate R by 10. New app asks for 11 TCPs gets R by 2. So the chapter 3 summary. Principles behind the transport layer services: multiplexing, demultiplexing, reliable data transfer, flow control, congestion control, instantization and implementation in internet, UDP, TCP. So this was all about the transport protocol. So thank you for watching the video.